Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jalene and welcome to Jovi's Star Astrology. I appreciate your being here. This is an action-packed astrological week. As I mentioned the other day, if you watched my videos that I put out earlier this week, there's a lot going on as we approach this lunar eclipse in Scorpio that is happening on Sunday, May 15th in the United States. A lot of change going on in our lives, in the world. I'm sure we can all feel it and see it. And many other planets and transits are coming together, interestingly enough, as we approach this eclipse and in between the solar and the lunar eclipse, that all have significance, I believe, in the culmination and the outcome of this lunar eclipse and the beginning of this eclipse season for all of us. So we have things coming together this week. I talked the other day about Jupiter in Aries and Mercury retrograde. All of that is going on. And now, as we approach this eclipse, we have Venus in the sign of Aries, where she is not very comfortable. She is a little bit, immature and not sure-footed in her expression in the sign of Aries. She can be a little bit impulsive and independent, a little bit about, just look at, all about me, and which isn't bad all of the time. We have to look out for ourselves, but she is coming conjunct with Chiron in Aries, and Chiron has been transiting in Aries for quite some time. Those of you that are in your early 50s are likely experiencing your Chiron return. We all have a Chiron return in our early 50s, and of course we all experience Chiron differently in our lives. It's in a different sign generally, and a different house for sure, for each and every one of us. But there is a large group of people right now born in a certain time period back in the late 60s to the early 70s that are experiencing their Chiron return in Aries. And this Chiron transit is affecting those folks most significantly. And of course, as it travels through Aries, it's going to affect points in the chart of any individual that might create a square or an opposition to another cardinal sign. Aries is a cardinal sign, represents action and movement, and the other cardinal signs are Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So even though some of us, many of us, are not experiencing our Chiron return, we could be experiencing significant triggers in our life related to this Chiron transit in Aries. And this week, now through the day of the eclipse, Venus is coming conjunct to Chiron and will be conjunct Chiron during this eclipse. And I wanted to talk about this because Venus and Chiron in Aries is in a Mars-ruled sign. This lunar eclipse and this entire eclipse season is on the Taurus-Scorpio axis, and Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Mars. So we have these powerful conjunctions in Aries, Jupiter or Venus, Chiron, Mars will be in there soon in the sign of Aries. That is directly linked to the same type of energy as this eclipse cycle is the sign that this eclipse cycle is in. So it is related. Mars and Pluto coming together is very powerful energy. So all of this is very significant. So I wanted to come on and talk about this Venus-Chiron conjunction and what that might mean, in addition to what Chiron means in general for those of you that don't know, and give a brief description of what Chiron in the signs might or does represent, and you can take a look in your birth chart and see where Chiron has been nudging you your entire life. And I'm sure that it will resonate once you start to dive into it, and then of course reflect on your life. So we have again Venus conjunct Chiron in Aries coming up on this eclipse, and this is a place where wounds are being triggered within us around our level of confidence, whether or not we are good enough. Can we take action to actually make things happen in our lives in a way that is expressing love rather than anger and aggression and impulsivity, which can be Aries qualities. And Venus conjunct Chiron is asking us to do that, but it will create situations and bring up emotions that will trigger us internally. It will trigger our own internal wounding. Something will or could happen that is going to hit very, very close to home. So this is something to be mindful of as we approach this eclipse. Chiron is in astrology what we call the wounded healer. Chiron is an asteroid, not a planet, but an asteroid in the sky, and we all have one in our chart. And Chiron represents where our soft spot is. So we come into the world, or we experience some kind of internal wounding around the expression of the sign that our Chiron sits in. Either we bring that in from a past life potentially, or we experience some kind of significant wounding early on in our childhood, and so it represents a soft spot that we will bump up against situations, whether that be people or events or emotions, through relationships, through situations in our life that trigger and touch that soft spot over and over and over again. And as we learn and grow and become aware of what that trigger is for us, we can start to learn to work with it. Our Chiron wounding is not necessarily something that we can ultimately heal, but it is something that we can become aware of and learn how to identify our triggers and dive deep into figuring out how to manage it. I can include Chiron in my readings all the time. In all my birth chart readings, I talk about Chiron and its significance, because I feel like Chiron is what gives us empathy. We may not be able to heal it completely within ourselves, but we can become aware of it, and then in turn use that energy and to recognize the same wounding in other people, and then be able to come together and help one another manage and heal that wound, and put out there in the world a much higher and more positive expression based on healing towards ourselves and towards everybody out there in the world. And that's the idea behind Chiron and our primal wounding. And so with Chiron and Aries transiting right now in the zodiac, we are all being triggered either by being witness to or feeling ourselves what our own internal wounding is. Chiron and Aries is the wounding of the self and the expression of the self. This Venus and Chiron conjunction is asking us to deal with whatever comes towards us and triggers us, to deal with it in an expression of love and recognition of what is, before a reaction, of course, what is being triggered internally, and how can I manage that and transmute that in a better way. So interesting that this is coming up right before the eclipse. because this eclipse is a gnarly eclipse. I'm not going to lie, I think this eclipse is going to be significant. It's going to be a purging of emotions at the very least, losses in the physical world potentially. It will bring with it powerful emotion and loss around the scorpionic energies that are described in the zodiac in astrology as sex, death, transformation, shared resources, obsession, secrets. So this can be very, very heavy. And if you have points in Scorpio or Taurus on this eclipse axis, it will be much, much more significant to you personally, as well as if you have aspects to this eclipse. Again, if the house that Venus and Chiron conjunct traveling together is aspecting this eclipse too and hitting cardinal signs and fixed signs. So those are the areas of your chart that you want to look at. Where do you have cardinal signs, and within those houses do you have points, and are they close to where this Venus conjunct Chiron is hitting? So you're looking for cardinal sign points from about 12 to 14 degrees, and when you're looking at the fixed signs in Taurus and Scorpio points in your charts, and the other fixed signs are Leo and Aquarius. There will be aspects there if you have points or planets, and personal planets specifically, from degrees of about 22 degrees to about 27, 28 degrees of Scorpio and Taurus. This will be affecting the area of life that those points sit in your chart. So very significant. I think it's going to be just a very intense, potentially life-altering or emotionally profound eclipse. This eclipse, I believe, is going to produce very quick results. I don't think that a lot of this is going to fester under the surface. I think that whatever, especially if you have sensitive points, whatever is going to culminate or change for you is going to happen fairly quickly, and it will be noticeable. It will be something that is of an emotional nature. So back to Chiron and the wounded healer. I explained this Venus conjunct Chiron in Aries, in a Mars-ruled sign, happening at the same time this eclipse, lunar eclipse in Scorpio is happening, which is ruled by Pluto and Mars. But what if you don't have your Chiron in Aries? Well, again, you could still be affected, like I explained, based on the houses and the points in your chart. But you can look for your specific Chiron sign in your chart, and I will tell you what each of them mean. So if you have, we already went over Chiron and Aries, that's the first sign of the zodiac. Chiron and Aries, the wound of the self, so that's all around. And you can overcompensate your chironic wound, so, or you can sort of drop back into the background and not express it as much. So it's just like with anything else, it's balance. You know, it can be one extreme or another. And of course, as we bump up against our Chiron wounding throughout our lives, that's probably what will happen. It'll be kind of like a pendulum. You know, we'll react extreme in one way and then swing back the other way until we can come into some kind of balance with that. So if you have a Chiron in Taurus is all about the wound of loss and security. So some way, if you come into this life with a Chiron in Taurus, you've experienced some kind of loss in your security or your comfort that has created a fear and a soft spot for you around money comfort, resources, and also your own personal value. If you have Chiron in Gemini, that is the wound of words and communication and expression. So somewhere along the line, you were not listened to, or you felt like you weren't heard, or you were criticized maybe for your learning style, or how you performed in school. It could be bullying in school. It rules learning, reading, writing, communicating. Gemini and Chiron is ruled by Mercury, so it is all about the mind. This could manifest in actually, overcompensating, trying to state your case and try extra hard, maybe too hard, to prove a point or to show that you are able to articulate. Or it could manifest the other way, where you can't make a decision and you come off very confusing in your words and expression to other people. That's how they might see that. Chiron and Gemini can express in being too loud or too quiet. It can express in exaggerating or leaving things out. Chiron and Gemini, the wound of words and communication. If you have Chiron in Cancer, that is the wound of the family. So something you carried in or you experienced a wounding around the family, the home, your ancestral roots, and also the mother. If you have a Chiron in Leo, this is the wound of recognition and confidence, pride, and the ability to experience joy. You came into this world with the wound of not being so sure, so you could overcompensate and try to be the life of the party, and it kind of comes out in an obnoxious way. Or you could be the wallflower who doesn't feel confident enough to actually enjoy life and interact socially in a way that expresses exuberance and being able to be fun and lighthearted. If you have a Chiron in Virgo, this is the wound of being critical, and that can be critical of yourself and overthinking. The wound of perfection. It's important to, you think you have to make everything perfect, or you feel like you need to be of service constantly, to the point of wearing yourself out, and it becomes a sacrifice for you, and then you feel that you're being taken advantage of. So you could over give, you could overwork with a Chiron in Virgo. If you have Chiron in Libra, this is the wound of relationships. So you could overgive in relationships. You could try too hard to keep things balanced to the point of depleting your own sense of love and joy. You could also be the extreme of that could be an expression of being manipulative in some way, because you don't want to have an imbalanced environment. So rather than express your truth and your position at the risk of making others unhappy, you kind of bend things a little bit and modify them, and it may not be an exact and true expression of how you feel or that is appropriate for the situation. If you have a Chiron in Scorpio, this is the wound of control and obsession, everything scorpionic. This is a very deep chironic wound and can be very, very difficult to overcome. But if it can be wrangled, there is power in the ability to transform that. So that is trying to control your emotions or being obsessed over something that you want or you're attached to, or keeping yourself in a place where everything is very much under a veil and secret to other people, just sort of burying your emotions because you're afraid that if you express, you will lose control. If you have a Chiron in Sagittarius, this is the wound of faith. Sagittarius aren't quiet, so Chiron in Sagittarius is going to express very loudly if it's overcompensating that Chiron expression. So you could really be very pushy and about what your beliefs are and your faith is. It's sort of like it can express in sort of a preachy kind of way, or you could actually lose faith and not have faith in anything and just sort of be like, anything that that says it's got my back just isn't true. I don't have faith in those kinds of things. If you have a Chiron in Aquarius, this is the wound of friends and acquaintances. This is the wound of community. So you may be very apprehensive about connecting with others. You might have a very difficult time. Detachment of community and friends and acquaintances is something that can be expressed with Chiron in Aquarius. Having a tendency to be a bit manipulative so that you can protect yourself from how you feel or how you were mistreated in some way within a community or a friend group. If you have a Chiron in Pisces, this is the wound of betrayal, and there's a lot comes with that. It's the wound of sacrifice and betrayal, of feeling a sense of responsibility to sacrifice your own needs for others, and it can be a placement that is easy to fall into martyrdom, or easy to overgive, and constantly feel like you are sacrificing, your own internal peace for the sake of others, and you are always on guard. That is another expression, on guard and not able to trust, because somewhere along the line there was a significant sacrifice or betrayal to you as a person that created that internal wounding. So Chiron placement in your chart is very important to understand when you're learning your birth chart. It does help you when you're trying to move towards your life purpose, unpack trauma from your childhood, look at your past lives. It helps you understand where you can contribute to the world and its wounding based on your experience and how you felt in terms of your own personal wounding. So Chiron is very important. I encourage all of you to read up on it, take a look at your chart and see what sign and house placement your Chiron is in. And if you're interested in learning more about Chiron and how it sits in your birth chart and how you can work with that, get a hold of me at jovisstar.com. Over on my website, send me a message. And hopefully in the next few days up to this eclipse, if something triggers you that feels, that feels like it touches a soft spot inside, remember to try and step back before acting and consider both sides. Aries is the opposite of Libra, and so the balance in that polarity is to harmonize and think about the other people involved when we're experiencing some kind of wounding before we act. That would be a great thing to do. This is a good time for healing. It's a good time for healing around love and money, and chances are something in those areas will come up to trigger you. And again, more specifically, if it is aspecting points or personal planets in your chart. So I will be back to talk about this eclipse, maybe even a few more times before the eclipse actually hits. Again, I think it's going to be very significant, cathartic and emotional eclipse for all of us. So let me know in the comments what kinds of things have happened since the solar eclipse occurred a few weeks ago, and you know, if you're interested in knowing how this eclipse is affecting you, get a hold of me as well. I'll take a look at that for you. We can look at transits in your birth chart and see how you can work with this energy and make some sense of what is happening currently for you and how this is designed to help move you along in your evolutionary process, in your soul growth. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. If you haven't liked, subscribed, and shared, please do that. I really, really appreciate it. And I have the chart up here, of course, and I didn't even use it, but I will blow it up here for a second and show you, for those of you who don't know, what Chiron looks like. This is Chiron right here. So when you pull up your chart and take a look, that's the symbol that you're looking for. And again, Chiron is an asteroid. It represents our primal wounding, and it can be very helpful to our soul growth to understand our own personal Chiron, and also to understand the energy of Chiron that is transiting at any given time currently in Aries, so that we can attempt to understand and learn about ourselves as well as others. Okay, so I will see you next time. Again, thank you for coming. May the stars forever be in your favor. Take good care. Bye.